Hi, I'm Jennifer Lehr. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, your host of the Yearning Heart Podcast, and the creator of an app for relationships called Reconcile. When we descend to the underworld, and her second relationship, this is a descent to the underworld. If you follow mythology, all kinds of myths about this. But in order to get out of the underworld, we have to change. We have to open to new possibility. We have to look at ourselves. And this shows the mythic arc of her relationships, how she started wounded and found a stable relationship and then moved into a descent, a relationship that would trigger her in so many ways that she would have to find a way to heal. And then the new relationship with so much hope and promise. Welcome to the Yearning Heart Podcast, where we discuss with everyday people our journeys towards love, our growth, and the yearnings of our hearts. In this podcast, we're going to be talking with Willow. And Willow has a really interesting story. We're going to be very specifically looking at her wounding and how that caused her to move through a series, basically 3 major relationships, so that she could heal. What can happen sometimes in the trajectory of a person's life is, in order to heal, they may pull in relationships, difficult relationships, to go through a painful period, but it causes them to open up into their wounding, identify their wounding, and to heal their wounding and allow for new possibilities. When you have a wounding, in her case, a mother wound and a father wound, it affects your choice of relationships, and it affects different people differently. In Willow's case, she first looked for stability. She knew she wanted to be taken care of. She wanted someone she could lean on. And that is what she picked, those qualities, for her first marriage. When that marriage ended, she went for something entirely different. And that had a hook. The hook was, you are special. You are important. But the person saying those words couldn't follow through on them because he had a severe alcoholic problem and was most likely highly narcissistic. That's what we're going to see happening in this podcast with Willow. And today we're speaking with Willow Light. Willow is an esthetician, a herbalist, an intuitive healer, and she has a great relationship story to share with us. She also is a person who loves nature. Nature is what nourishes her, I think, if that's accurate.
Absolutely.
And I will be putting her website in the show notes in case you're interested in finding out more about Willow. So, hi, Willow. I'm so happy to have you on.
Oh, Jennifer, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking to you. So I want to start with your story. I'm going to give my recap and then I'll have you add in your recap and then we'll go deeper into some stuff. So you had a good first marriage, but you and your husband were mismatched spiritually. And that is what I believe caused you to end up moving on.
Yes.
And then you got a second relationship, which ended about 2 years ago. And that was with someone who had a lot of narcissism, which obviously is toxic and caused huge problems for you. And you eventually got out of that. And then you are, I believe, in a new relationship now with someone you've known for many, many years. And that relationship is a good relationship.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the very, very brief recap.
Very brief recap. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. What I from talking to you before, what I learned was you have a mother wound, and I'm going to bring the wounding in because that affects all our relationships. Mm-hmm. Your mother had a mental illness, a severe mental illness that affected her ability to nurture you and connect with you and care for you.
Absolutely.
How did that impact your relational development? Let's put it that way.
Because of the really deep work that I've been doing, especially the last 2 years, but around 15, I found connection to nature through spirituality. And I taught myself how to meditate. It took years later to understand that what I was doing was meditation. I was trying to connect to source. I was trying to connect to nature. I was trying to save myself from this crazy life that I was thrown into. And it made me very resilient. It made me tender, and it made me very fierce. And I took no shit. And it was hard to be soft.
Wow. So you really got strong in order to survive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was very determined. I knew that once I turned 18, I could leave the foster care system. At 17, I found my birth father, and he was living in Europe at the time. And he asked his company to transfer him to California. So I moved to California and went to a high school my senior year in Venice, California.
Hmm.
That really changed my life. It opened my eyes. I had grown up at the Oregon coast in foster care, and I was really sheltered, but I knew deep inside that things weren't right. Right. It was also because my mother was ill. I did hear about her, and every once in a while I would visit with her for a few hours. It was never like overnights or anything like that. And I got really close and intimate with nature and plants and healing and medicine and reading. I grew up without a TV, and so I was always reading and sitting with the plants in the forest for hours and hours and hours a day. But going to California also opened me up because it was a different kind of nature. It was ocean in a different way, and a lot of almost like bees in a hive, like a lot of buzzing, a lot of energy, right? And we are energy. But I understood at a young age that I could move my energy, which could change my life.
How old were you when you went into foster care?
3.
Wow.
Yeah.
So really young. And did you have siblings?
I have 2 half siblings, but I didn't grow up with any other children. Yeah.
So, okay. And then your father, in a sense, rescued you when you were 17.
Yes,
That's accurate.
absolutely.
And do
Hmm.
you have a good relationship with him, or did you?
I do. I love
You
my
do.
dad. He still
Okay.
lives in Portland, where I ended up living most of my adult life.
Uh-huh.
And then just recently moved to Washington about 3 years ago. Um, I have a really good relationship with my dad. It wasn't easy at the beginning because we were strangers, and I was a teenager who had a lot of anger. Um,
Right.
yeah, I wasn't physically violent. I wasn't shouting at people, but I was really disappointed in adults that were around me. And I had a knowing, like I said, I had a knowingness that, like, this isn't how you're supposed to love children and raise
Right.
children. The foster care system isn't it's everything that people say it is. It's very rare.
Jennifer jumping in. Worth noting that Willow has a very wise part of her. She knew as a child that the way she was being treated wasn't okay. And consequently, she has a distrust of adults and a knowing that she deserved more cognitively. Now, this will get worked out over time in these relationships.
To hear that someone had a good experience
Yeah.
and has gone on to be really super successful. Yeah.
Wow. So you just happen to have a really strong spirit and you funneled your hurt into protection and anger and I'm going to get through this and that kind of energy. And so you probably had a mother wound and a father wound because you didn't have a father till you were much, much older. And
Yeah.
both of those probably affected you deeply. And then you met the man who would be your first husband at some point.
I met, yes. So I, I think something to be mentioned is that I didn't drink when I was a teenager because of my mother. I didn't really understand exactly her mental illness. And so I thought it was drug addiction and alcoholism.
Um,
And then it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started drinking. And I drank until I was 36, or no,
wow.
35, and I quit.
Okay.
Um, I used that to stuff those feelings, right? But on the outside, everything looked
Good.
It looked really good. I was marrying someone who had been raised Catholic. His parents had been married for 40 plus years at that time. It was over 50 years when his father passed away. It was a solid family unit. I was looking for that. I was looking for stability, creativity, someone who was strong willed like I was, and someone who really could be a leader, because I knew that I wanted to be soft. I wanted to be feminine, and I wanted to be in my spiritual essence as a medicine woman and a healer. And so he was a blind date. And we were together almost 20 years, and we're still really good friends. And we have 2 children that we're raising together. We live 9 blocks away from each other. Yeah. So, yeah.
So what were the feelings that you were stuffing that people couldn't see from the outside?
That I hadn't been chosen, meaning that my mother couldn't get her shit together.
When Willow says, I hadn't been chosen, meaning her mother could not get her shit together, this is the wound. The voice of the wound is, I'm not chosen. I'm not first. And it left her very angry and very hurt. It also left her determined. But that wound, that voice, I'm not special. I'm not chosen. I haven't been made first. That is a very deep wound that for her is calling to be healed.
The people that I lived with in foster care were really unkind about everything, whether it was the tone of my voice, the way that I looked, that I took up space, that I was breathing.
Foster care for Willow was very wounding. She wasn't affirmed. She wasn't made to feel special. She wasn't acknowledged. Instead, she was made to feel like she was taking up space that she shouldn't be taking. This is a massive wound. On top of this wounding, she has a mother wound because her mother had a severe mental illness, and a father wound because her father was not in her life till much, much later. When you have wounding like this, the wounding, if you want to grow, if your soul wants you to grow, the wounding may require that you have difficult experiences in order to take you down to a place where you open in a new way. So you were angry, and you were probably really hurt.
I was very hurt. I was really hurt. I didn't know how to take up space and be me without drinking. And
Right.
yeah.
So that the outside world didn't see. They saw the competent Willow. And then you met this man and you had a 20-year pretty good marriage, it sounds like.
We did. We really did. We were really creative together. The work that I've been doing in the last couple years, especially, and like I was meditating, I'd gone to the Center for the Healing Arts. I was learning how I had learned and was just in process of like really honing my energy and intuition and moving that energy and helping heal people. And he's super creative in different ways, but they melded together really well. I always have felt like we were more brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you picked him because he was solid, stable. You knew you could lean on him. But it sounds like what happened over time is you became aware of a mismatch in terms of who you were as a spiritual being and what he could, and who he was and what he could in terms, how do I put this? What he could validate in you.
Yes.
And that piece was the missing value that you needed. You needed someone who could say, I see the part of you that is really spiritual and I value that and honor that. And that's where there was a miss, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah.
So the thing to notice here is Willow is talking about a mismatch spiritually in terms of core values. So she has a good relationship with her first husband, but there is a mismatch here. And there is a deep part of her that knows that she needs to move on. Despite the fact that we should work on our relationships, it's not always true. Sometimes there's a need to move on, even if you're in what appears to be a good relationship. And you knew somewhere inside of you that you wanted more.
I did. Yeah, I did. And something that had changed, it was a real issue for him, my drinking.
Uh-huh.
And so I quit, and and we'd been together about 8.5 years at that point, and had been married. And when I quit, I did this herbal detox, and I got pregnant with our 18-year-old daughter that we have now. That really shifted our relationship. Raising children always does.
And how did it shift it for you?
I think for me, I saw it as a collaboration that that's what my vision was, that there was this collaboration. There really wasn't a collaboration when we were married. It wasn't until I asked for a divorce, we separated, we divorced, and we came together as co-parents and not in a relationship that it became a collaboration. And
How
I
would you
actually
describe
knew
it?
that I had a vision. I saw that the
Okay,
only way that we would be able to raise our children, because we had also had a son 5 years later. So this is going on for a while, and I'm
right.
watching. And I had a vision. I knew, and through my meditation and dream work, that the only way that we would be able to raise our children in the most healthy way, in the best collaboration, was to not be married and to not be in a relationship and to not live together.
And so before you separated, how would you term your relationship if it wasn't collaborative? What was happening?
It was collaborative in business and in industry, I guess, is the way that I would put it. But there was just such a disconnect once we had our kids that it just it none of it felt like we were able to master all the things that we had done before our children came along,
Right,
that it just got so distracting. And the relationship between he and I, and what we had to fulfill in each other, giving each other, making sure that our needs were met. We've been
right.
together a long time.
Yeah.
Once we had children, those needs, I just looked at him, and I think he looked at me and said, I can't fulfill your needs and raise this kid.
Uh-huh.
It was, yeah. And we're able to do that because there's no mucking up of relationship.
Right. You don't need him in the same way.
Mm-mm,
And he doesn't need you in the same way.
absolutely no.
So whatever the gap was, removing that gap opened up space to be much more connected and collaborative in terms of raising the children.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
And
while it was there, it sounds like it was a big distraction or like a knot that was in the way.
yeah, it really was.
And it was neither of your faults. It just wasn't a relationship that was supposed to go for 80 years
It
or
wasn't.
whatever.
It
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that's good to know. Sometimes people think, well, I should be able to make it work. And sometimes, yeah, a lot of times you could put some effort into it, people out there, but sometimes it isn't the relationship that you're supposed to spend your whole life in. And because people grow and change, or new needs emerge, new visions occur, new insights, and sometimes you have to learn it with a new partner.
Yes.
So that's what happened to you. And then after that, you got into a relationship with someone who was very unhealthy and abusive. I think you called him a narcissist when I talked to you before. And my sense from talking to you is that that relationship had a purpose, and the purpose was to bring up all your unhealed wounds so that you could actually look at stuff you hadn't truly looked at and begin to heal them. And is that accurate?
It's so accurate.
Jennifer jumping in here again. Relationships often bring up our unhealed wounds, or many of our unhealed wounds. And that is one of the purposes of a relationship. Not everybody, but a lot of people, the relationship brings up wounds to be healed.
So when I was married, and even before I was married, years before, I was an herbalist. I was practicing, fully practicing. I was an intuitive. I was a healer all through my marriage. I was meditating in the morning, meditating at night. And the reason that I tell you this is because, so we separate, we're going through the divorce process, super easy peasy. We didn't even get attorneys. After being together, 2 kids, we did it without attorneys
Good
because
for
we
you.
cared that much about our kids.
Right.
It was way more important for them. So it was a couple years after we were separated that I met this other person through being introduced to them by someone. So I felt like there was a little more of an understanding, like he's vetted. But I had started drinking when I asked for a divorce. My husband, he did not like me drinking. He had asked me to quit drinking. That's why I did. And then I
Right.
got pregnant, had our kids. So I didn't drink for 9 years.
Okay.
And I had started drinking after we separated because I felt a lot of guilt and shame for leaving a perfectly good marriage, a perfectly good husband, a perfectly good situation.
And that's a great point. The guilt that comes up when you end something, because you don't realize you're actually supposed to move on. Even if you know it, there's a societal guilt that this is good, I should stay. And that isn't always the case. Jennifer jumping in here again. Willow was left with a lot of shame and guilt for ending her first marriage because it appeared to be a good marriage. So it was hard for her to say, I have a right to end this because something inside of me is telling me I need to move on. Even though from the outside, this looks like a perfectly acceptable marriage, she knew deep inside that this was not the be all end all marriage for her. She knew she needed something else. And it's really hard to listen to that voice when you've got consensus reality society telling you, oh, you shouldn't leave. She left, but she was also left with guilt and shame. And that also had to be dealt with down the road.
It isn't always the case. And again, I had a vision. The woman that he is engaged to, he's been with since we broke up, maybe 6 months after we broke up. He was introduced to her on a blind date. I had a dream about her, multiple dreams about her.
Mm-hmm.
She looks exactly like the woman in my dreams. I've told her this. She is my soul sister. I love her. I have always loved her since the very beginning. I love that she's around my children. I love that she's in my life. I love that I got another woman, another feminine in my life that's strong and beautiful and a blessing. Absolutely.
And she's good for him.
And she's so good for him.
And
She
he's
loves
good for
him.
her.
That's
So for
right.
whatever reason, she fits the person he is now.
Absolutely.
Whereas you weren't fitting so well before. So that's really cool.
It's really cool and such a great blessing.
Yeah.
Well, it was a couple of years later. I've been drinking. I was in the muck of it. I was still meditating. I was still spiritual. I was still doing all the things, but I was just straight up in a shame spiral and sabotaging myself every step of the way.
So if the shame could speak, what would it have said at that time?
You don't deserve to be happy.
That's brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve it.
So because of her guilt and shame, she went into a shame spiral where she took that shame in and self-sabotaged. She told herself that she didn't deserve to be happy. Those were her words. I don't deserve to be happy, because she took the voice of shame and she internalized it.
So this person comes into my life. I had been told It wasn't necessarily a warning, but I had been told by multiple women that had been around him. A few had dated him, a few had just known him through the music scene, because they were married to musicians that played music with him.
Okay.
Um, they told me that he is a womanizer, that he isn't very kind. None of them knew how severe his alcoholism was and is. So I went into it honestly with like, I'm physically, let's just get it going. I'm not, my heart's not gonna be in this thing. I could give a shit about you, and great, you're a womanizer. As long as we're using protection, I don't really care. Um,
So
yeah,
you went into it with this sentence in your psyche, I don't deserve to be happy.
yep,
And that influenced your ability to enter into something that wasn't going to be a good chapter in your life.
nope, nope. I was going headfirst into, I deserve to be punished. I
Right.
deserve whatever comes my way. I deserve it. Um, and I know that I'm going to suffer.
The relationship Willow gets into is, as she describes it, narcissistic and toxic. It is also with an alcoholic. And it sounds like, as you listen, to a pretty severe alcoholic. And this relationship brought Willow down to her knees. It caused her to go through a very, very painful period.
I didn't really think that I would have been with him as long as I was. I didn't see that.
Right.
I thought because of his personality that he wasn't going to want to settle with me. He wasn't going to want to get to know my former husband or my children or any of those things. I figured, this is just he and I privately, and very quickly he said, "Oh no, you are different." And I hadn't really heard that before. I hadn't heard things like, "You are my soulmate."
Or
I,
special.
yeah, I didn't know what a narcissist
So
was.
that was a hook.
Oh, yeah. I had
And
no idea.
just to mention, you were in that relationship for 6.5 years,
Yeah.
correct? So
Six
it's a
and a half
long-term
years.
relationship, but he hooked you early because the part of you that needed to know you were special and a soulmate and all of that really got activated by him.
Yeah.
Now, with Willow's specific wounding, she runs into man number two. And when he says, "You're my soulmate, you're special, I want to be with you," that is an extreme hook. It is very hard to have the wounding that you're not special. And then someone comes in who you're attracted to and says, "You are special." So that you actually overlook the red flags. You overlook the alcoholism. You overlook the warnings from the friends who know who this person is, who have told you he's a womanizer, he's this, he's that. You overlook all that because the hook is very strong. And remember, Willow grew up in the foster care system. People weren't saying, "I love you, you're special." That hook went right into that wound.
Yep. And the fact that he was this womanizer about town, and that women that had dated him, they were like, "Oh, he's so fun and he's so sexy and he's so this and so that, and good luck, but he's not going to settle down with you, and I wish that he would have been more into me." And so all of a sudden he's like, "No, I want to be in this monogamous relationship with you, and I want to get to know your children. I want to help you.
Wow.
I want you to
Right.
move in with me."
Right.
um yeah.
And that's extremely seductive. I mean, for someone who's got an active wound and really looking for her place, to have someone say that to you is so seductive that you forget about all the bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, when did you start feeling in your body that, or what behavior started happening that made you go, "This is toxic and not good for me at all"?
The first one was I was drinking, he was drinking. I had asked for us to take an Uber. He said no, everything was fine. I had only known him a few months at that point.
Mhm.
I said, okay, but we're just going to go straight home. And he wrecked the car with us in it. And
Because he was drunk?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know how he didn't get arrested. I don't know how there was, I mean, I don't see it as a blessing that he didn't get a DUI. I don't
Right.
see that.
Jennifer jumping in here again. So, among the red flags, one of them, and there's a number, her partner was drunk and said, I can drive. And she let him. Whether she had a choice or not, I don't know. But he said he could drive, and then he wrecked the vehicle with her in it. He endangered her life. This is a massive red flag. And yet we can get red flags and red flags and red flags and still not be able to leave because whatever it is we're learning isn't complete yet. So while she was strong enough to stop drinking with him and to stop drinking, period, she wasn't ready yet to say, I don't want to be with an unsafe alcoholic.
So
Right.
I had a serious talk with him and we quit drinking for several months. And we had lots and lots of talks about it and about how I had not drank for years. I was here to be a support. And then after several months, he kind of got me to have one drink and then a glass of wine. And I am a free agent. I am not saying that he is responsible for me starting to drink again. So I drank for another 6 months with him. And at 6 months, I said, that's it. I'm done. I maybe we stay in this relationship. Maybe we break up. I don't know, but I'm not going to drink anymore. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
I quit 7 years ago. And so it was about a year into our relationship when I said, I'm not drinking anymore. And I'm not kidding. I'm never taking another drink, whether I ever see you or not. He continued to drink.
Right. And what happened to your relationship when you weren't drinking, but he was?
I could tell that he tried really hard to keep that mask on and to keep, because now I know about narcissism. I've studied it a lot. I've read a lot. I've prayed. Oh my goodness. He tried really hard and I thought it was love. I really did. I thought, oh, this person really loves me. And so he wouldn't overdrink every day.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like after 3 or 4 days of drinking every night after work, then it would start to kick in, and then the weekend would come, and then there was some really squirrely things that happened.
Jennifer here again. Another thing is if someone's alcoholic, they're not going to have a good ability to self-regulate. They're using the alcohol to help regulate. You cannot expect to be in a relationship where you co-regulate each other effectively if you're using alcohol to self-regulate, because it means you actually don't know how to self-regulate. And if you don't know how to self-regulate, you're going to have trouble co-regulating with a partner.
And then COVID happened and he has some health issues and he couldn't work for a year until there was a vaccine. And my son was in first grade. So I had to ask to be laid off so that I could be home with my 6-year-old son. There's nobody that we could take him to at that point.
Right. Another thing to bring up here is the interweaving at times between narcissism and alcoholism. Now, they are not necessarily always connected, but they can be. So if you are highly narcissistic, you're going to have low insight into yourself, a lack of self-awareness. And that means you're going to have a lot more trouble admitting that you have an alcohol problem. And alcohol can be a coping mechanism for narcissists. So there is this link between alcoholism and narcissism that can sometimes manifest. And it sounds like in this particular case, there was a link where the alcohol helps manage some of the narcissism. The narcissism prevents the person from realizing how impaired they are, and so on and so forth. There's a back and forth flow that can happen there.
And that's when the abuse really started. That's when this yelling and screaming and the silent treatment, the abusive language, the neglect, very similar to things that my mother did. I mean, I remember at 1.5 years old of the
Yeah,
things that happened with her.
right.
And they were so similar. Him packing his suitcase after just having a heart surgery.
When things got really bad, Willow realized that this person's behavior was very similar to her mother's, her severely mentally ill mother. The yelling, the screaming, the silent treatment. And she had the aha. I'm in this relationship because I've got to look at the stuff that happened between me and my mother and how it affected me so that she could continue to heal. And that was a pretty big aha.
This actually happened during COVID. My
Wow.
children and I are sitting in the living room. I just picked him up. He's drinking. He's having alcohol. And he packs his suitcase, rolls it out of the house, doesn't say a word, calls 10 hours later and says, I'm in San Francisco. I don't know when I'm coming back. Maybe your children can go to their dad's.
So let me just get this straight. When COVID hit, how long had you been with him?
We started dating in June of 2017. So it'd been
So,
3 years.
okay. And at that point, the honeymoon was over. You and him are in the same space pretty constantly.
Yep.
He's dealing with health issues. He's dealing with the fact that he can't work right now. He's dealing with his own ego stressors. And you're in the line of sight, and he goes after you because he doesn't have the skill set to handle what he's going through without getting abusive.
Yep.
And that went on, it sounds like, for a while, and then at some point you left. How did that happen?
So once we were able to get vaccines and my children were able to go back to school, went back to work. And I put it out to every single friend, please help me find another place to live. So I found a place to live. And he had asked us to move out multiple times during COVID. I was
Right.
like, I'm getting unemployment, but I don't have enough money. And
When she wanted to leave, eventually, was lucky that she had a community who were willing to help her. And often when we want to leave an abusive situation, you need support. You need to know that you can find a place or you can land on someone's couch, that you have the money to leave, that you can do it. And having a community who see what you're seeing, who want you to succeed, who want you to get out of the abusive situation is really important. And Willow had this. She had a community of people who wanted to help her escape this relationship. And with their help, she did. Right,
this is
right,
just not the time, buddy.
right,
It's not the time. So once it was maybe a month or two after he went back because he got the vaccine and he could go back to work, my children and I moved in with a retired teacher, which crazily enough, she was a severe alcoholic, but she wasn't going to abuse us.
okay,
And so we moved in with her and lived with her until I got the job and moved to Washington. So we lived with
right,
her for about a year and a half. Um, when I moved out, he told all of his friends that we were going to stay together. And I thought that we were, and I thought that maybe things would be a little bit better. And then he broke up with me the day after I moved out. And his ex-wife had told me that he would do this. And he had broken up with me through COVID and then would leave for a week at a time. And his
right,
ex-wife said this is what he does when he goes to cheat.
right, right.
And he swore up and down that's not what he was doing, but whatever. Anyway, so I was like, okay, maybe this is the best thing for us. And then he reached out and said he quit drinking and he was begged and begged and begged for me to come back. And so I did, on the condition that he wasn't allowed to drink around me. I didn't, I don't want to hear you quit drinking. If you're not in some sort of therapy or something, like, you didn't quit drinking. You didn't quit drinking. So you just can't drink around me. And maybe we only have one date a week, or maybe we only see each other once a month.
Right.
And then he, a few months later, he totaled his car drinking.
Wow.
Thank God I wasn't with him this time.
Right.
And he swore he was going to quit drinking. He bought a new car a few weeks later, and he was out with friends drinking and driving, and confessed about drinking and driving to me. And I broke up with him and said, I can't do this anymore.
Right. You were at that point like, I don't want to be in a train wreck of a relationship anymore.
No.
And I don't want to be collateral damage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So he's are you still friends with him, or is that completely, it's over?
I stayed friends with him in the sense of, like, we were friends on social media. We had we texted a little bit, birthday things for the first couple months of breaking up. I had moved to Washington, and we got back together for another year. That's how messed up.
Addicted. You were in a sense addicted to him.
Totally.
So another thing to bring up is Willow was addicted to this relationship. She had an addiction. The hook, you're special, you're my soulmate, that hook sank so deeply into her wound that she was addicted to this human. And that is one of the reasons why it took her 6.5 years to leave this relationship.
I haven't spoken to him or had any sort of contact or seen a picture of him or spoke to any of his family or friends in a year and a half.
So in terms of that voice, the shame voice, you don't deserve to be happy, or whatever, however you worded it, how did that dissipate? How did that heal in the middle? So you're in this relationship with this out of control human, immature, out of control human with a limited skill set. That's what I would say at this point, because his skill set was going out and getting drunk as opposed to dealing with what's really going on. How did you heal that part of you that felt like you didn't deserve to be happy through this process of this painful, difficult relationship?
I would say that, so he claims to be very spiritual and is always he meditates every day, and he has a guru, and he's all of these things, right? That's part of the narcissistic tendency. A lot of times I was outside my body, Jennifer, where I could see.
You dissociated.
I did. And I would watch what was happening. And I would talk to myself and say, okay, the reason that this is happening and what you're going through is you need to dig a little deeper. You got to get in there. Not with him.
Right.
Let this shit come to you. Let this shit come to you.
Willow talks about, when we talk about dissociation, Willow was talking about how she was watching what was happening, but she was willing to stay in that relationship until she was able to leave, because she had a strong witness. So even though she was suffering and things weren't going well, she was able to witness what was happening. And that is a really good tool, to be able to witness what you're not denying, you're in it, but you're watching it. You're watching what's going on, and you're noticing. It's an important step in the process of healing and disengaging from something that's toxic. She has curiosity about this relationship. And that is really important, to be curious about why we have a certain experience, to not blame the person or blame the experience, but instead to say, why was this my experience? What was I learning? That is how you open gates to new ways of being.
And it wasn't until we broke up that I was able to just crack open. And then I did a psilocybin facilitated, licensed facilitator
Yep.
journey.
Yep.
And I hadn't cried in 8 months. 8 months after we had broken up, I hadn't cried. I couldn't cry. I wanted to cry. I wanted to release. And then I did that journey and I cried for 7 hours.
Wow.
And it wasn't enough, right? 6 months later, I did another journey. I cried through that journey. Each journey told me to reach out to him. And each time I did not. I told myself that this is the false self, that is the manipulation, that is trying to pull you back in. And you have to resist. You have to resist. And this is part of the medicine. This is the medicine. And then I was like, okay.
Willow did some psilocybin trips, and those trips started opening up grief for her. She cried and cried and cried. This is the power of using this kind of healing technique. She moved into sitting in the wound. Before this, as she mentioned, she was hurt inside and also very angry. But it doesn't sound like she fully connected with the wounding that she had grown up with, that she had experienced until she did the psilocybin journeys. In that journey, in addition to the grief and the crying, there was a voice that said, you need to get back with him. You need to fix this. And she knew, and this is really, I think, unusual, she knew that was a false voice. She was able to say, no, that is a false voice. That is the voice that keeps me hooked. It's coming through even now as I'm in this grief, and I'm not going to listen to it. It's really, really great to have the wherewithal to discern what voice is what.
And then, like 4 months ago, I had another breakthrough where I had seen something come up about him, and I completely broke down in the middle of the day. And I called my therapist and I said, I think we need to talk. And I told her what happened, and she walked me through this. We almost did like a reverse, like, where did it start in your body? How did you feel? And I looked up and I said, oh my God, this is my mother wound. It's right here. It is. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now I know how to deal with it. Now I know. Now I know. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
For coming into my life and breaking my heart in a million pieces.
Yeah. So you went through this horrible experience, and then you had to cry, really break apart in the journeys. And then you had the cognition, the understanding of, oh, this is about my mother who was abusive and couldn't be there for me. And then you could heal the actual wound. He wasn't the actual wound. He was the Band-Aid that didn't work, that brought up all the pus basically, so you could heal it. And so that is a really great example, because people often don't realize how what we go through that's difficult isn't wrong or bad. There's a reason it's happening, and we do have the capacity to use it to heal. Now, one of the things that you said that's really interesting to me is you said when you're in the journey, the voice or the part of you that says we have to contact him, and that you had another part that was wiser and knew that was your addicted piece talking.
Yeah.
That was the addiction personified, addicted to the unavailable mother.
Yeah.
Of course, as children, we have to be. There are gods. But in your case, it manifests when we're adults differently than when we're children. And that's how you were able to go, I don't believe that part, because you had enough experience with yourself as a drinker, non-drinker, as many parts of yourself. And you knew that that's a false voice.
Yeah.
And not everybody would be able to discern that, but you were able to. And that was really, really amazing that you could say, that's a false voice and I'm not supposed to listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was so much of what came up the last almost 2 years is these false voices of like, if you just, gave him a little bit of love, he needs you,
Right.
and this will relieve you. Like, it's
Right.
going to relieve me to have this addiction in my life. I can quit drinking, I can quit smoking cigarettes, I can quit eating sugar or whatever. But if I don't heal this, the other piece was, I'm not dating. I'm
Right.
not going to confuse myself or confuse anybody else until I have really released this. It's always going to be there. My mother wound's always going to be there.
Right. Of course. Yes.
But I won't need to attract this kind of medicine ever again.
Uses the term medicine when she's talking about her relationship. And the reason she's saying medicine is because she is aware that this relationship is about healing deep wounds, that going through these painful experiences is about her healing her deep wounds. And people with this kind of deep wounding often pull into their lives experiences, difficult experiences to heal it, so they actually can move on and open their lives up to new possibilities. And so if you're in something really difficult, you don't want to judge yourself. There's a reason that you're there. There's capacities you have to develop. There's experiences you have to have. As long as you know you don't want to be there forever, that you're intending to heal from this process. Okay, that's great. And then you recently got together with someone you've known many, 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 many years. And sounds like you're having a good start.
Oh, it's the sweetest thing ever. We met in fourth grade. We were 9 years old. I went to a new foster family,
Oh, wow.
and he was in my same class. And we went all the way to our junior year in high school when I found my dad. And since we've talked, he's like, you were just gone. And I heard that you had moved to California. And there were only 50 people in our graduating class. It was very small.
Yeah.
It's very small towns. And there's multiple towns that are going to one high school. There's still only
Right.
50 people in our class.
Right.
Um, he was married for 25 years. After that, he was in a 10-year relationship. This is a sweet man who's so, he journals and he's connected to his soul and his spirit, and he loves nature like I do. And he's musical. We learned how to play guitar together in high school. I wasn't, like I said, I was single, hadn't dated, I wasn't dating, wasn't looking, wasn't closed off, wasn't open, was just really in a place of, I need to really love myself. I was doing my baths and I was walking 5 miles a day and I was eating really well, and I had quit smoking cigarettes, which was something that was like deep in the shadows. Most people didn't know I smoked.
Right.
And I had so much shame around that one too.
Willow didn't date for a couple years after this relationship because she knew she needed time. She didn't want to bring her stuff into a new relationship. And that really speaks to the part of her that wasn't needy, the part of her that was willing to say, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to give myself a chance to heal. And I'm not going to just jump into the next thing that comes along. Highly advised for anyone leaving a toxic relationship.
So I had reached out on Facebook because I saw something, and I had just asked him, I said, how's your soul? How's your heart? Do you have any plans for the summer? And we started talking, and we were both single, and we saw each other like 3 weeks later. We made plans, and I went to the coast and went to his family's house down at the coast, and we spent 5 days together. And we came away from that going, well, here you go. Look at that. Imagine that. For me, I feel really good about the long distance because my son's 12. My daughter just
Right.
graduated high school. I'm still raising a young man.
Right.
And um, And so I need that really focused time with my children. And his children are in their 20s, and he completely understands that. And he's gone so far as to understand that I don't have any more vacation days. And so he has to come to, we live 6 hours away, a just 6 hour
Okay.
drive away, but it's only an hour flight. So he can fly here, spend a week, work remotely. And he's coming back in a few days for his second trip to Washington. And, and we talk about living together, and that's fine. But, it's really just wonderful just to be around someone who's so honest about our imperfections.
Yeah.
Something that I think is such a blessing, and I feel really grateful that I get to experience this, is being able to see through a lens of who we are as children, our disposition, our ethics, our morals, our integrity as
Right.
children, which is a bizarre thing to say that children have all this integrity, but we do.
Right.
Our core as children is our core as adults.
So are you saying that because you knew him as a child and saw who he was as a child and vice versa, that you have a better sense of his core self?
I do. And
Okay.
he feels the exact same way, that we have this wild opportunity to be able to look in the past, and then 45 years, it's been 45 years since we
Since you
first
knew
met.
him.
Yes. And we're just bigger bodied and have more
Right.
experience and memories,
Right. Right.
but we are still those children,
Yeah.
which is really sweet and
It
innocent
is.
and beautiful, and also connects us to spirit
Yeah.
and to everyone.
Yeah. So it sounds like your connection with him it sounds like you got a good person who you trust because you knew him as a little guy. And but he's also much more on the same page as you are spiritually, in terms of your spiritual interests, in terms of your connection to nature. And so it's a better fit for you because you are more aligned. Your values are very aligned.
Our values are very aligned, and you're right. And where we are, age and stage in our lives,
Yeah.
is very much aligned. And no one is perfect. He's going to disappoint me. I'm going to disappoint him. That happens. And the other thing, too, is that the two relationships that he had, those long term relationships, are people that we went to school with. These are people that would, if there was something hidden, they would reach out to me. I
Right.
am not walking into this blindly with,
Right. Well, you're also not getting messages. He's a womanizer. He drinks too much. It's a completely different scenario
a
than
completely different scenario.
man number two. Yeah.
Absolutely. And because I think that we were talking about that earlier, is that I decided to stay single and to not invest in anybody but myself and my children.
And you were
And
single for how long?
2 years.
Yeah. two
Yeah.
years of going, I don't need anyone. I'm going to focus on my family and myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which shows a lack of desperation. If you get divorced and you're immediately or split up and you immediately need someone else, there not always, but often there is a desperation there because you feel empty.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that I could not do that.
You weren't
I
ready.
and I knew there were so many things that happened in that last relationship that I knew that he was with a woman, if not multiple women, especially at the end,
Right.
that because we were long distance, and one of the women knew that we were in a monogamous relationship, and I have never done that. I've never been with someone who's married or in a relationship, because I wouldn't treat a sister that way. But being on my own for 2 years and just saying, like, no, you got to get through this. You got to figure out why it was that you chose to be in that relationship. And that's, the mother wound and feeling unworthy and feeling that
Yeah.
I should be punished and that
Right.
I wasn't allowed to be happy.
Right.
Um,
So
yeah.
moving forward, you have this new uh, promising relationship, and you've got your son to finish raising, and sounds like your daughter's 18 now,
Mhm.
and you're working, and it sort of sounds like a dream come true. What is there something you're yearning for that hasn't happened yet, or are you just in the perfect space for you right now?
I feel like I'm really in a beautiful space. Being in a relationship where I have a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom to just move about. I've never been in a relationship like
Like
that
that?
before.
Because you were probably more dependent in your first marriage,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then
Absolutely.
you were twisted in the second relationship, and now you're in a relationship that you're connected, but you also have a lot of breathing room.
A lot of breathing room for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I I think that something that I was yearning for while I was single was being able to get out in nature more and to be able to kayak in these pristine lakes and
Yeah.
rivers. And he's doing that for me. He's taking me to these places again that I grew up as a child, that we grew up in
Yeah.
as children. And so I'm getting my cup filled
Right.
by what I knew that I always needed was to get back to nature. Yeah.
With someone you were compatible with and attached to
Mhm.
and had a good connection with and
Yeah.
wasn't mentally ill and all of that.
Right.
She's in a new relationship now, and it sounds very promising. Of course, we don't know, it's early, but when she talks about how the trust she had of this person when they were children and how they're aligned spiritually, and you get the sense of, yes, this is what some of the work has been for, to open up into new possibilities, a new way of relating. Now, that doesn't mean they won't have hard times ahead of them. That is part of every relationship. But from looking at the trajectory through her life, it feels as if this relationship is very hopeful. So the hope is this new relationship she's in will show interdependence. She won't be too dependent. She won't be too independent. They will be interdependent, where they help regulate each other's emotions. They can lean on each other and they can have their own lives. That is the meaning of interdependent. It's not dependent, even though there's dependency, and it's not completely independent, even though there is independence. There is a co regulation and a support of each other, and we would call that interdependence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a great story, because it really, the arc of your story really shows when we have trauma growing up, the drive for security is very strong. And then we can still outgrow the person we're with, and we can still enter into something that's basically a descent. It's a descent into an underworld that we have to do changes in ourselves to get out of.
Yeah.
And then doing healing, and that opens us up for a new possibility. And that's your story, which is a wonderful story. It's a mythological story. That's the myths talk about that. The wound and the static time and the descent, and then the coming back out with the healing and the new vision. And it's your own personal mythology, this story of your relationships, which is lovely. When I talk about mythology, what I'm talking about is this vast trajectory that can happen in a person's life, where there are distinct chapters with distinct purposes. So her first chapter we'll call her wounding chapter, having being, not having a father, growing up in foster care, having a severely mentally ill mother. We could say, and I'm sure there's more, but this is me putting it together very roughly. Her second chapter, a stable marriage with someone who she felt she could lean on, but whom there were some missing ingredients. And yet they're very good friends, and it was a intentional purposeful relationship that worked for a long time. The relationship after that was the descent. That is the relationship that took her down to her knees, that she had to heal from, that she had to experience and eventually leave and recover from and heal, that brought her to the wounds of the very first part of her life. That relationship opened those wounds up and gave her a way, a passage back to what happened so that she could then heal and move into something else. Do you have anything you want to say before we stop?
I just want to say thank you. I'm so glad that somehow I found you and you stopped me in my tracks a couple different times when I've listened to you speak, and you were some really good medicine for me. You helped me a lot this last year. I think we've been connected for about a year.
Wow.
And
thank you.
Yeah, and it was through that and that you've been so welcoming, and I just want you to know that you've made a difference in my life.
Oh, thank you so much. Because when you're out on social media, you have no idea if you're really impacting anyone or not. So thank you for saying that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to close with, it's lovely to hear your story. And Willow, you can find her. I will put this in the show notes, but her website is willowish.com, WILLOW-ISH.com, backslash. I think that's a backslash. And I'm not that good at that kind of thing. Anyway, it was lovely to talk to you. And if the listeners or viewers like this, please subscribe or comment or share or whatever you can do to help me get my work in the world. If you would like to learn more, you can go to my website, weconcile.com, WECONCILE.com. Thank you so much for listening.